Just 1 week after the greatest spectacle in racing finally saw the checkered flag wave in 2020 and Takuma Sato crowned the Indy 500 champion for the second time, the IndyCar iRacing Series heads back to the short track for the final oval race of the season. 10 points separate the top 3 drivers in the championship, and with 3 very tricky road courses looming, it's time for someone to lay down a championship gauntlet here at the Worldwide Technology Raceway. Hello and thank you for joining us here live on the iRacing Esports Network for RaceSpot TV's coverage of round number 12 of the IndyCar iRacing Series. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, doing double duty on commentary and camera work, and I am joined by Justin Prince in the virtual commentary booth. And Justin, we're here at a short track, but a slightly odd ones by, typical IndyCar standards at 1.25 miles. It's slightly longer than you might expect, and I'm expecting drivers to be working very hard on those in-car tools at both ends of the racetrack to get the maximum performance out of their machines.
Two different sets of corners absolutely to handle today. A lot of adjustments expected for the weight checkers at very different ends of the speedway. In turns 1 and 2, much more banking, as well as a higher camber corner exit that has caught many drivers in practice and as well in many other events off guard with oversteer. In turns 3 and 4, it's much more flatter, and many drivers also been caught off guard by hitting the curbing on the left side of the corner exit. Both ends of the speedway could see several spins today.
And we take a quick look at the schedule. Like we said last week at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and the final oval race of the calendar here at Gateway. And we're going to finish it off with 3 road races: Barber Motorsports Park, WeatherTech Laguna Seca, and then back to the Brickyard for the road course. And the standings are very, very close. Like we said, just 10 points separate the top 3, Justin. But the very important factor is 3 different drivers at the top, and 3 drivers who have all used their 3 drop weeks in very, very different ways.
Yeah, Hugo Olsen at the top of the standings has had 2 0-point outings and 1 27-point outing amongst his drop weeks. Adam Crane, he's had a majority of his drops in decent outings. Then you have Sorenzo, who has a mixture of all in between. 3 points, 93, 117 amongst his respective drop weeks for this series. So all these drivers, it could come down to how their drops are calculated and how they run these next couple weeks to see what ends up being their drop weeks.
And just a few moments left in qualifying, 5 seconds left on the board. Just a reminder, live timing is available, timing71.org/racespot. Go straight to that live timing, and we'll just wait a few more seconds. The car's about to get onto the grid for qualifying. Let's go ahead and take a look at today's starting order. On pole position, it is the championship leader, Hugo Olsen for Powerslide Motorsports with a 24.251, and then Andreas Eich from Team Talent lining up next to him. David Taranto lines up in P number 3 with 3 Crowns Racing's Oliver Silva in P4. Row number 3 is Brendan Lichtenberg, Broken Arrow Team I5G, and Adam Crane in 6th place with John Downing and Eric Winter on row number 4. Jesper Orman and Marco Aurelio Brazil line up on the edge of the top 10, and expects Marco, who won last time who had a very strong running last time out at the Brickyard, to be contending for the win here today. The edge of the top 10 is Dan Lianch, Matt Hollerbaugh, then 13th and 14th, Julian Arbro, Aaron Roos, and Kazuhiro Shiba, Laura Gerhardt. And we're going to start looking at some cars who haven't set times here today. Matt Houston, and then Andrew Z. Wood back in 18th place for Team Talent. A lot of work here. And Tobias Cantart, the last car in your 19-car field. And 19 cars, Justin, it's a bit smaller than you might expect for this IndyCar grid, but that might mean it's a little bit cleaner or what could be a very, very difficult race. We take one more look at the track conditions right now. There is a very, very strong breeze blowing across the circuit, and that's going to be one more challenge for these drivers to overcome.
I was just about to mention that. Look how much it's already gusting up to 28 kilometers an hour. That's a headwind down the front straightaway, and as well, that's going to cause a lot of mayhem in the opening laps in turns 1 and 2, especially on the corner exits. Drivers were struggling with a bit of the hotter temperatures as well. 31 degrees Celsius for tonight's track temp for the green flag. That's 87 degrees Fahrenheit, fairly warm under the lights tonight.
And under the lights we are, and when you see the Dallara IR18s taking the track in the real world this coming weekend for a doubleheader of racing action, it's going to be under the hot summer sun, so going to be seeing something slightly different here today, Justin, and something that you pointed out that I think is going to be very important. Those caution periods that we might have to see a few of, they're going to be 5 laps in length, and so they're very lengthy, and I think a lot of drivers might have to start thinking early about how they want to use the caution strategy to make some track position and get further up the field here.
On average, about 50 laps is the fuel run here. So for many of the drivers, they have to think about that if they try and play the caution game. If we get an early yellow, do a elected sacrifice track position and hope to extend a run and then in turn pin some drivers down when they have to pit in if there was a caution between then. That's to be a wait and see type of moment for tonight. But overall, you're thinking about those numbers and have to make sure you crunch them. Essentially, it's about at least a 3-stopper on the fuel to take the checker flag tonight.
We are expecting, though, some element of cautions to come in and mix that strategy up a little bit, but it is going to be the championship leader out front. He spoke about it off the bat. He's already used all 3 of his drop weeks. He's got a lot of work here to do, starting from the very, very best position he can. Got a lot of drivers around him to watch out for, and away we go here at the Gateway Worldwide Raceway. Straight away, Hugo Olsen's going to jump to a big lead here, and David Saranza are going to try and challenge. That is Andreas Eichen to turn number 1. Fortunately, though, everybody getting single file throughout this field. You have to go all the way back to 11th and 12th position where Dan Liench and Matt Hollabaugh are scrapping it out.
Able to get back single file in that grouping. Just about all the groupings single file to turns 3 and 4. And many of the drivers were when they want to make passes are likely going to try and do so on the inside line of that 3 and 4 section of the racetrack. Turns 1 and 2, you risk a lot of chances of pushing up almost a little bit on the track with the different lines. Some drivers like to go a lane up, others a couple lanes up. It's very line sensitive here at Worldwide Technology Raceway at Gateway.
And line sensitive is very important because 1 and 2 are much more tighter than the open 3 and 4. So 3 and 4 can be taken much flatter, but right now you look back at a scrap for 5th place and Adam Crane running the brand new livery Satellite Racing, being challenged by Brendan Lichtenberg, Eric Winter, and Marco Aurelio Brazil. That high line not seemingly working for the Satellite Racing driver, as it's Eric Winter on the inside who moves himself up into the 5th position now to go through 3 and 4.
Yeah, Crane currently in a position where this is going to drop him some positions. Smart thing, probably try and at least to fight a little bit, but at least try and maybe get towards the bottom. This is looking like a slipstream train starting to form up. To swing back up towards Satellite Racing in that new livery. New partnership as they're now squeezed to the wall.
Oh, and Marco Brazil up into the wall, and one of those drivers in the top 3, unfortunately, getting caught up in an early race incident. Unfortunately, Justin, you can see the damage to the front wing of that car. That might be very lucky. Might just need to come down and get the front wing replaced.
I believe he also had some side pod damage, though, from the squeeze to the wall. That was extremely tight there. And that's one of the things that is a tendency here. You'll see plenty of drivers, regardless of the car type, push up on corner exit turn 2. That time, squeeze to the wall. 2 damaged race cars from the caution.
And you can see Marco Aurelio Brazil going up into the catch fencing as well. We'll try and get a look on board with Adam Crane here. See, here we go. In fact, here is the replay. You can see coming around this corner. He's running high up into the wall, and unfortunately, no space for him to go. And I think, like you say, Justin, that side pod damage is going to unfortunately be what might be the bigger factor here for Adam Crane.
Yeah, it's on the right rear part of that side of the race car a little bit. The whole front wing like going to have to be replaced here. That's why he's having to come down to the pit lane. Keep in mind, no tire set limits for this oval race tonight. So he is the only driver actually coming down outside of a few drivers at the back of the field under this caution flag to take the free pit stop and a couple extra laps of fuel on the mileage.
Yeah, so like you say, Adam Crane, the only driver in the top 10 to really come down. You have to look back to 12th place Dan Liench, the first car to come down pit lane, and everybody has joined him behind there. So it's going to be cars in the top 10 who didn't come down pit lane, and it's going to be interesting here to see just how long this pit stop takes. He's already been in the box for 15 seconds. Well, the typical pit
He's
stop
out of the car.
That's unfortunate. So it seems like that damage then might be a little terminal.
I mean, he did bounce coming off the wall. You have to think about that, as some of the fans may notice there. So there is the risk of suspension damage from that type of hit when you bounce off the bottom of the racetrack. There's the chance of your whole entire wheel being essentially non-straight for the rest of the run. Keep in mind, you also have Brazil, who's out of the race already, who flipped multiple times just about. Down that back straightaway and ripped the whole front nose cone off in an entire sequence. So likely at least one car out in a second with significant repairs here. That can lose him a lot.
And we'll take a look from this aerial camera as well. Look at Brendan Lichtenberg and his avoidance skills. He saw that Tent Factory Sim Racing IndyCar coming up into the path of Adam Crane, and at think that was another car there in the background there, Justin, who spins as well, trying to just avoid all the carnage unfolding in front of him.
Yeah, absolutely, and I don't blame that respective car from losing control. They're trying to avoid all the carnage with the car in the middle of the back straightaway. But still, I believe that car's okay, but Hugo Olsen still up towards the front. A good start for him, you have to say, at the very least, though.
Yeah, he got a great jump, managed to pull away by almost 1.3 seconds from the chasing pack behind, and we saw that little grouping of Adam Crane bottled up in the 6th place, and all that cars gaggled around. Well, we've already got 2 cars retiring from this race now. Lights still are on the pace trucks, so we're going to have at least one more lap as they head into turn 3. And Justin, you say it was the number 19 Julian Arbro. That was that car we saw spinning in the background of that incident.
Yes, very back of the field right now for this upcoming start, and was starting up towards the back of the field. Absolutely try and go towards left and right in that sequence, and that's where we've seen him lose control. Apparently, he had actually lost in that same sequence the engine cover somehow on that 19 machine, so able to get that replaced at least under this caution. He's in 17th. Still deep in the field to have to go and work through. Check that 16th now with Cantor right behind him.
And this race here today, 186 laps. And like Justin, you said, it was going to be an easy 3-stopper, but right off the bat, we've got this early caution flag, and it doesn't really mix up the strategy too much yet, Justin. However, it's those threats of cautions coming in the future that might play into the strategy a little bit more.
Absolutely, I can see a lot of this strategy being flexed around that if we get cautions, precautions, especially with now about 5 laps more fuel now for 11th on back. That's something the drivers have to keep in mind here, and they have that in the bank if anything else was to happen. But here's the downside. Many of them are going to end up having cold tires from that sequence.
That might not be such a big factor here on the Dallara IR18, which is running the older tire model. Now,
yeah,
of course, the rest of the oval side of the community is on the newer tire model, which is definitely a little bit more heat sensitive, and in the warmer track conditions that we are seeing here today, might not be so bad for some of these drivers, but we'll see what happens on this restart. Pace truck has pulled down onto the lane, leaves the field back in control of that yellow Power Slide Motorsports machine, and once again going to get a very, very good jump here. Going to pull out to a good 4/5 of a second advantage. Further back in your field, though, you can already see Jesper Orman trying to pull onto the back of Eric Winter and use these restarts as an opportunity to try and make a move happen. There's Oliver Silver, in fact, trying to get to the inside of Devotion Sim Racing's David Soranzo, as here comes Eric Winter now out of turn number 2.
What a great move on the bottom side. Winter just taking advantage of Silva not able to get that pass on the car in front. And that's going to bring Jesper right on forward with them here to make it a 3-car battle and scrap.
And 2 wide into turn 1. It's the car on the outside that, look at that momentum they're going to roll around the corner. Oliver Silver up into 4th place, or managed to hold on to that 4th place rather, as we ride on board with Jesper Orman for 3 Crowns Racing. And right now, it's interesting, you look back as well, in this little group, you've got Matt Holliburton working on the back of John Downing. These early race restarts seemingly an opportunity, Justin, for track position to be gained.
100%, great chance if you're able to build up enough slipstream run. But as these tires wear on out, as you start having to deal with a bit of the aero push, that's where it gets a little bit more tougher, I think, as the run goes on here. Keep in mind, the leaders are running still in the 24/7s in the cleaner air right now. Many of the drivers are down to as low as the 25/6s in the back end of the top 10 in trades such as this.
And Hugo Olsen out front in the Power Slide Motorsports number 4 IndyCar. Well, he's pulled out a 2-second gap already, so that car is definitely hooked up, making full advantage of the clean air right now to run away. The battle that we're watching on screen is for the final podium position. David Soranzo with a very good opportunity here, Justin. We've seen Adam Crane, one of those drivers in the championship hunt. He's been taken out of this one. Opportunity to try and claw back some points here. Just get up one more spot in the championship standings.
And was watching Soranzo a lot in practice prior to tonight's action and was looking fairly comfortable, it seemed, in the race car. But there was a little bit of tightness, it seemed, on the corner exits. We're seeing that right now with him, in fact, at the sequence. So that's going to potentially slow him down a bit, but he's good down the straightaways. That's the main thing, it seems, for Soranzo. The problem's going to be, can he keep it up with the pressure coming on from right behind him, with Silver looking better throughout the corners.
And it's not just Silva who's lined up here. I think Oliver Silva and Jesper Orman, both teammates for Three Crowns Racing, so they both will have very similar machinery, Justin. And obviously, we're here in the IndyCar iRacing Series open setups, which means that you talk about the difference down the straightaway. It's very possible here that these cars are running slightly different downforce levels. The Indy cars are allowed to run slightly more downforce at this track than they do at other short tracks, and therefore you can see on some of these cars the double plane wings as Oliver Silva looks to try and get a run out of turn 2 once again.
And that's something a lot of these drivers have to definitely have calculated for. Do they want to be quicker in the corners, or do they want to be able to try draft by other cars? That's a major question mark you have to have in your head to think about. So I expect a lot of these drivers to do what we've seen so far. Try and find the perfect, almost medium, it seems, Arjuna, between both, while making also the adjustments in his car with a weight jacker to compensate to try and get around these corners. It seems Silva, as mentioned, has a bit more downforce for the corners. Let's drag, meanwhile, for Soranzo in this fight.
Yeah, and I was actually just looking at the front wing, and this is where I'm regret as the caution flags out, and it's Tobias Cantert who was around, and that might have been a solo incident to bring out the caution. We'll get the replay up on your screen right now, and indeed the 16 car all on his own, and I think coming out of turn number 4, he's going to just lose the back end. Oh, and that's a very, very close call with another car. I believe that might have been Danley Ench.
Yes, it was indeed, who had to dive hard to the bottom of the racetrack. But that's nearly what we were talking about a little bit in 3 and 4. Drivers were also known for losing to that section of the track, and that's where they start getting up to that wind we were mentioning that's affecting cars in 1 and 2. What a move by Dan to just avoid that.
And we always say here in the IndyCar iRacing Series that you have absolutely no time to react to incidents as they come, and we've seen on multiple occasions already here, Justin. Drivers doing a very, very good job to get out of the way, but it appears like we have a split strategy out front. Hugo Olsen, well, he's staying out on track. Everybody else, except for a few cars, actually, I believe Jesper Orman is one of them, deciding to dive down onto the pit lane.
Interesting call here for Hugo to stay on the racetrack. Looks like confident in his car. This is also going to put him behind, though, in the fuel mileage game, to say the very least, to see how this plays out. Just about everybody down the pit lane here for the stop, except for Jesper Ullman, as you mentioned. So just about everybody taking this chance to get some more tires and fuel.
And we'll see who wins the race out of pit lane. But what we saw last week at Indianapolis is a very similar situation. A lot of cars dived onto the pit lane on an early caution. The cars out front decided to stay out, and when the caution flag dropped just a few laps later, well, the lead cars came down the pit lane and lost all that track position. So just getting some shades of that. And as you see, no changes actually in the race off pit road. It is Andreas Like, David Soranzo, then Eric Winter, Andrew Z. Wood, Brendan Lichtenberg, and Matt Holliber going to be the top 6 cars off the pit lane. And I'm very, very curious here, Justin, about this decision to stay out by these 2 cars out front.
It's a massive risk, or I should rather phrase, high risk, high reward situation, as you would call it, because you get a caution, say, at about 20, 30 laps, or Junior, you're likely seeing everyone else come back down with you, including these cars. If it goes green to the point where they have to pit, that's where it gets to the risk part. Because if you think back to one of the series that was broadcast a few weeks ago, the Classic IndyCar Series at Kentucky specifically, in the older chassis, there was 1 caution flag in that race. The top 2 drivers in that field just about stayed out on the racetrack during the early caution. Guess what? They didn't win the race. They were 9-10 seconds back. So this is a massive gamble if this doesn't work out the way they think it will.
And I'm just trying to think about here, as we see in the chat right now, some people are talking about that tailwind that we saw the start of the race. And I'm just wondering if some cars, maybe these 2 out front, have decided that, you know, that wind is so strong, Justin, that anything could really happen here. Maybe banking on getting a few more cautions out in short order.
Yeah, like I said, looked like absolutely the wind just started blowing that car around for the spin. And I think that's still going to be the case. The wind hasn't changed direction yet. It's changed miles per hour and kilometers per hour in terms of speed. But it's still stayed there much of the race. So it's something I think these drivers are going to have to definitely adjust for, as we've seen. Almost looking like they're a bit more tighter from the wind, just about in turns 1 and 2, at least visually. But 3 and 4, absolutely going to be sensitive as they start to go from having the draft from behind them, then now across their tail from left side to right, then back towards the front wing by the time they get to the front stretch.
I just wanted to follow up on the point I was trying to make before the caution came out. If we take a look at David Soranzo, we'll try and get a little bit of a closer angle. You can... This is where, Justin, I wish I had followed up on something that I said I was going to do slightly earlier. I was going to install the yellow pen tool. Well, if you take a look at the front wing on that Devotion Sim Racing machine, it has the single plane front wing. So you can see, if you look at the black part on the inside, just next to the wheel well, there's just one element to that front wing there. If we take a look at Eric Winter now, just wait for the camera angle to switch over and take a look at the front wing on his car. He's running the double plane front wing. So we saw the difference down the straightaways, and there you can see, in fact, two elements stacked on top of each other on the front wing. You get a great shot of the two cars there, and you can see just how different they are. And Justin, before we get back to green flag racing, that's where we're seeing the difference in these cars handling.
Absolutely, and we've seen that there were, once again, it seems like with the single wing plate, it's been faster in the corners, but with the double, it's been quicker in the straightaways. There's a reason, it seems, here tonight, Arjuna, for obvious reasons, that only two drivers outside of Soranzo elected to go with that decision for the wings. Everybody else has went for more aero in that regard and are much more quicker down the straights in some regards as a result, including your leader still in Hugo Olsen, who has been the king of the field, so to speak, with the crowns.
And you can see the 3 crowns on his rear wing as well. He's from Sweden, so used to race with those guys we're seeing in the 3 crowns racing team, but he's now part of the Powerslide team, and Powerslide obviously has won the IndyCar Road Series going back to, I think it's 2016. So he's joined a very, very strong IndyCar team. No bias from the commentary team here, Justin. I'm not part of that team at all. Hugo's not my teammate at all either, but nevertheless, we're seeing very, very strong performance from him. Like I said, he pulled out a 3-second gap just in a matter of a few laps there with the last restart.
He's definitely got the pace in that race car. The main thing's going to be, though, can he keep that car from making significant mistakes? That's the main thing. We haven't seen a single mistake from him so far in that yellow and bluish machine. But I'm still curious. How is it going to play out if he loses the track position in this fight? He's also been playing these single file restarts very well, knowing that keep it up towards the wall, wait for the timing, shift to the right gear, and then once you get to the straightaway, bam, you can use a little bit of the banking as a ramp if you want.
And also just keep an eye out. I noticed one car that's fallen a bit down the field. Oliver Silver in 10th position. So as we get back to green flag running here on board with Hugo Olsen, you can already see the type of jump he's managed to build up over the cars behind him. Just watch for one of his teammates further back in the field trying to make something happen. Take a look at the battle for the 3rd position on track. It is Andreas Eick now in front of David Soranzo and Eric Winter. And Eric Winter right back into the action, trying to do what he failed to do successfully, Justin, on that last green flag run.
Yes, this time, though, here's the difference. He's got it underneath. The problem is, though, again, the draft is just pulling Soranzo on forward. In fact, Soranzo now trying to take a little bit of peek out there. Just can't get to the inside.
Yeah, and he's really losing a lot of times in the corners as compared to Andreas Eick in front of him. And Andreas Eick's teammate Andrew Wood now trying to get in on the action, looking to the outside of Eric Winter. I think this is where we're going to start seeing some of the different setup strategies and setup philosophies start to blare themselves out. We take a look back at the action out front, though, because something to consider here, Justin. Jesper Orman doing a very, very good job to hang on to the back of Hugo Olsen right now.
Yeah, and this is the track position game we talked about. Chance to draft up towards the front and or try and get yourself out of traffic. For Jesper, that he was in traffic much of this race so far. So it's a chance to see what his pace really weighs out to. The main thing's going to be, can he stay within the draft? He was about nearly a full 10th of a second slower last time by. Well, everybody else is still stuck behind Soranzo, who's already lost nearly a full second out.
Yeah, and here comes Andrew Wood now. He's trying to get up into 5th place, trying to move up this field. Probably probably running a similar car to his teammate in front of him. And, you know, that setup and the teamwork, Justin, is something I cannot emphasize enough in the IndyCar. Now, there are a lot of sources to get setups and resources to learn the IndyCar here. We've got, you know, obviously the likes of VRS, PDS, the Majors Garage as well has come aboard recently, set up Sans Frontiers, lots of different options, but nevertheless, there is nothing like being on a team and working with your teammates to build the best race car. And I know you know this from your work with the eNASCAR Coke guys. You're being the pit reporter there, talking to a lot of the crew chiefs there, and a lot of these IndyCar drivers as well have a similar, you know, philosophy in their team of working with a setup guy.
Great ramp off the corner there from Wood, but you hit it right on the head there. Drivers on that side of the garage put in as much as 1,000 to 2,000 laps of preparation for each of those races. And there is a reason why when you are new to iRacing and want to get into setups, the first advice you get, even from some of the intermediate setup men, are you want to put in 1,000 laps because you want to have as much data as you can have, as well as know the knowledge of what you need to adjust for a certain type of feel. Do you need the car to feel like this? Is this faster? It's the way to weigh everything out as a setup builder for your respective car in the field. If you've got that testing ability and you've put in all that work, you're likely going to be fast in these types of races, to say the very least. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone uses an exact clone in some cases, Arjuna. In some cases, drivers with the setup knowledge themselves, not just with the setup builders, can make their own tweaks to their own personal preferences, which has also become almost a requirement for the stock car side of the iRacing service.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the IndyCar, you have the extra benefits of the in-car tools as well, Justin. So there's even more that an individual driver can play around with, and we ride on board with Andrew Wood, and we saw side-by-side action for 3 or 4 laps and unable to really make the move work. And here he comes once again, Eric Winter, just getting a little bit too checked up here by David Soranzo in front of him, and timing the run is becoming a very difficult thing for both of these drivers to try and do. We see the alternate lines being taken here. Andrew Wood going a little bit higher through 1 and 2, but I think unfortunately right now, Justin, they're just being held up by that slightly different the car that's just set up slightly differently, rather, and David Soranzo in front of them.
And again, they're just losing lots of time as a result down the straightaways. Alex ran away from them. But the main thing is, in this grouping, I've been liking that line we've seen from Wood, have to know, by trying to ramp it on down. He's timed this up perfectly to finally get clear.
What a fantastic pass around the outside of Eric Winter, now diving to the inside through 3 and 4. He's going to try and slide up the track, and he's going to get the move done. And David Soranzo back into 5th position. Now, one of the drivers fighting for the championship. He's now got to contend with the dirty air, and he's got Eric Winter all over his rear wing. He's wanted to make that pass happen, Justin, but like you say, timing the run perfectly. And we're going to get a look at the replay in just a minute here of what Andrew managed to do perfectly.
And he was trying this line several laps for Wood, was taking it almost up to the wall on the entry of turn 1 and going higher than anybody else by about 2 to 3 lines, and then ramping it down the banking. That's about 11 degrees of banking at that end of the racetrack, and the openwheels.com machine able to dive his way up the inside and finally get that run he was looking for to make the move. It was something he was trying to do in the car behind in Winter a couple times. That time, just finally got to the outside of Winter to take away the arc for the entry, and just arced it perfectly to squeeze between Winter and Soranzo to make the pass. Winter's finally also cleared on by Soranzo with a backdrop.
Yeah, just as we came back from the live shots, Eric Winter on the inside through 1 and 2 gets past David Soranzo as well. So Devotion Sim Racing's David Soranzo starting to struggle a little bit more. We'll take a look back out front though. Jesper Orman holds on to 2nd place, but there you can see in the background of the shot, Andreas Ike continues to try and close up a little bit here, as it appears though the number 15 car of Aaron Roofs has had an incident.
Yeah, no more front nose and no caution flag as it was off the racing surface. This is why. He was way off the gas, actually still looped it to the inside, and bam! Just shears off the front nose. And that car, well, that's gonna at least lose him a lap.
Yeah, and you can see it almost looks as though he was understeering very early in the corner. You could see an almost abnormal amount of steering lock being placed into the car, and the rear end comes around and snaps on it. Unfortunately, he's down onto pit lane right now. Gonna have a lengthy repair, I would assume. But like you say, Justin, fortunately, no yellow flag has come out.
By the way, Crane now officially out of the race, so that means 16 cars still running on the racetrack, Arjuna. But look at this pace Wood has been able to find. Now that he's finally clear, he's a rocket ship. He's the quickest car on the racetrack.
Yeah, and he's trying to look for a way past his teammate here, and we've seen these two do battle many times over the last few weeks here on the iRacing Esports Network, and it's yellow versus brown this time. And Justin, I mean, we've seen these team talent cars, all sorts of colors, yellow versus blue, orange versus purple, I do believe. But right now, it's the brown machine of Andrew Wood down the inside into turn number 1. So you're going to get the move done. And seems a little bit like team orders there. Andreas Ike just getting out of the throttle into turn number 1 a little bit early.
I mean, at the same time, though, you have to remember, those drivers up in front have to have pitted about 10, 15 laps or so. So they're essentially the net race leaders that can now control the tempo if they want to. Don't necessarily need to put pressure on the 12 and the 4 machine up front. So they can just take control of the pack, communicate that way, and try to figure out, okay, how do we plan this out? At the same time as well, Wood just seems to have found something that everyone else hasn't been able to find on this racetrack with that line in 1 and 2.
Yeah, and as he comes around turns 3 and 4, we'll try and see what his lap time is now that he's in clean air. But the gap to the leaders is holding pretty steady. And I think, like you say, Justin, I think now he's definitely just got to... I was going to say he's got to calm down and control the race, but caution is out. And I'm trying to figure out who this is for, Justin.
I believe it's the 16 from P12, and it's a similar situation to what happened to Aaron Roofs. Roofs has already confirmed he's done and had some understeer and tried to muscle it. Looking like almost a similar situation with Kankert, where he was struggling off turn 2, but also had a car behind as well in Shiba. Tried to keep off Shiba, and bam. Same amount of contact this time, though, enough to ricochet him up to the track.
And a second incident for the number 16. We'll get an aerial look at it here, and you can see the second car behind, and unfortunately just trying to stay out of the way there, Justin. And it seems like a lot of these cars just putting a little bit too much force into the tires. The rear end of the car just coming around and snapping hard into the inside wall.
Absolutely, and it, like I'm saying, similar line to what we've seen with Roofs on that, but that caution couldn't have come at a better time if you're Olsen and Orman up towards the front, because now they don't have to pit under green, and that's the risk versus reward. They are now rewarded by not risking their track position, and guess what? This is just their first pit stops of the race. Some have already pit up to 4 times.
Yeah, and that's what I was just about to say when the caution flag came out, Justin. You know, if you're Andrew Wood, you know you're in a great position here. And like you were saying, just calm down and control the race. But for Hugo Olsen, it could not have worked out more perfectly. He's going to have to spend a little bit longer in the box, I would assume, just by the nature of having to take a little bit more fuel into the car. Still expecting him and Jesper to get out in front, though. And that's the risk versus reward, you say, but the interesting thing to consider is we're not really talked about it just yet. So we watch Jesper Orman drop, and he is going to clear Andrew Wood, and there goes Hugo Olsen. So he's going to be clear as well. No changes in the top 5 running order, but like I'm saying, green flag pit stops here, Justin. It's a short track. You don't lose 2 laps. At the Gateway Raceway, you do lose about 1.5 laps, I would say. You go in danger of going 2 laps down. So for Hugo Olsen, he's definitely counting his lucky stars that caution came out at almost the perfect timing entering his pit window.
Especially with about maybe 7 laps of fuel, give or take, left in the tank. Yeah, this helps them with the fuel numbers, absolutely. And I have to say for Jesper, it's now a +7 for him on the race. The gamble paid off for him because, remember, he was stuck around that train in 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. Now, he's got track position in 2nd spot with a chance to try and hold on. Keep in mind, Wood, he wasn't able to put in a qualifying time, as we mentioned. He's up 15 spots. He might have something to battle with here with Hugo and Jesper here once the green flag flies.
And I hope Andrew won't mind me saying this, Justin, but in the last few weeks, his qualifying performances have definitely not been up to the standard of his race runs, and currently up 15 places. And, you know, I just go back to that fantastic pass he made, 2 cars in 1 lap, and, you know, that's the type of moves you need at a track like this. It's not always going to be easy to make the move happen, but when you find that opportunity, you got to cling on to it with both hands and up into the top 3. That's exactly what he's managed to do.
Absolutely, and part of it has been the pace he's had. Part of it has been finding lines that no other driver have tried so far. What a heck of a drive, to say the very least. And this is now going to be the challenge to see, is it Hugo's clean air that's been propelling him forward, or is it some of the air drivers with the chance to try and scrap have not been able to find the track position yet? I think it's a mixture of both. We're about to see, though, really if this is going to be put up to the test when the green flag flies here in a few laps or so. By the way, 15 cars are now left in the race, Arjuna, as a result of that last caution.
Yeah, so 15 cars, so 4 cars have then retired. So it was Tobias Cantert who brought out this most recent caution, and he has officially left the race session. Aaron Roofs, Adam Crane, Marco Aurelio Brazil, your 3 other retirees. And it's been an interesting race here, Justin, because despite the fact that you might only see 19 cars in the field, the lowest I rating driver is over 2,000 I rating, so still a fairly strong field. And we've seen a few, surprising faces. We look back at Brendan Lichtenberg, the Team i5G driver, and we saw the i5G team winning last time out in Indy, not going so well for them this time around, 8th place, and struggling a little bit more with the race performance of the car.
But it's not the same type of track, though, as you have at Indianapolis, where it's 4 different ways you take the corners, flatter racetrack, and speed and more speed of up to 220 miles an hour. Here with the short track style of Worldwide Technology Raceway, you have to deal with a bit more of the banking. You have to try and have a bit more less speed in the corners. You have to deal with the differences, of course, you mentioned with the aero. You have to also think about the different factors of the slipstream and the amount of wind that these drivers have been dealing with. It's not necessarily lemons to lemons, so to speak, that you may see work at the Brickyard.
Yeah, and we'll just talk a little bit about the past weekend and the Indy 500. And Justin, it was a very interesting race in a lot of ways. And I think more than anything, though, it was the finish of the race that seemingly garnered more attention than anything. Obviously, the lack of a red flag, and as many, I don't want to call them NASCAR fans necessarily, but I think it's fair to say that demographic has been a little bit confused as to why the race finished under a caution.
Yeah, you have to keep in mind that green white checkers are not instituted in IndyCar, so to speak. But the main thing as well is, again, it was later on in the race. It was towards essentially what would be almost seems, Arjuna, I'm not sure of your thoughts on this one too, is almost past the point where you'd see a red flag, because think about it this way. Back in some of the mid-2000s races, there's specifically Talladega, Aaron's 499, where Jeff Gordon won at one point under caution. There was a lot of unhappy fans because they passed the point where they could actually throw the red flag in that race. So you have to factor that in to say it's something that not every series does, like in NASCAR with the green white checkers. This race, 186 laps, you have to keep in mind if there's still the point of no return, as we've seen in the earlier days of iRacing, is off and away goes Hugo.
And if we see some of the racing be as close as it's been the previous 47 laps, I'm expecting that to be a very distinct possibility. And straight away on the restart, Eric Winter defending that inside line from the 6th place Matt Hollabo. As Andreas Ike in front of them, giving them a good healthy dose of draft, as you see in the background as well. Brendan Lichtenberg on the inside of David Soranzo. David's going to be fighting hard here. He doesn't want to slip back to 8th place in this train, especially with a very quick Oliver Silva behind them, trying to make some positions happen as well.
Some really good position battles right now. Keep in mind, Silva's lost some time on some of the pit stops at one point. A 10-second stop that he took. Just not able to get the run in on Lichtenberg. Seems to look like, again, you want to try and get it more so in 3 and 4. Lots of time lost for Silva, though. He's not been able to work his way back up. Meanwhile, Elk, who was one of the quicker cars last run, he's already lost nearly a full second to Wood and Company.
And so those top 3 cars separated by just a second right now. So Hugo Olsen does have some challenges for the race win in the form of Jesper Orman and Andrew Wood. But we're looking at the teammate Andreas Ike in 4th position right now, and in a very comfortable position, Justin, because he's got the clean air in front of him right now, and he's giving that dirty weight to all the cars behind. And as you see Oliver Silva now making another look to the inside of Brendan Lichtenberg, he's just got a little bit more clean air to work with here, and that seems to suit his car much more than some of these others.
Looking like it absolutely at this point, as Soranzo just continues to just drop like a rock at the head of this group, as you'll hit upon a little bit with that different wing configuration. This is not good if you're Soranzo, because again, this is not something you can just adjust to. You're missing a whole full element compared to the other cars. It's not going to be that quite easy, as still up towards the front. The top three covered by just 0.7 of a second. Wood was the fastest car last time by, with the fastest lap of the race.
Yeah, and he's running some very interesting lines right now, trying to just close up, and you can see, in fact, Justin, just how close Jesper is being able to run here. This is the closest we've seen anyone trying to challenge Hugo Olsen for the race lead right now, and it may become a three-way fight right now. Andrew Wood definitely trying to roll that outside line. Maybe Justin trying to preserve the life in his tires a little bit more at this stage.
Absolutely, because that is, again, a factor that can affect you in the later stages of a run, since there can be a decent amount of fall off potentially around this racetrack. Still, though, at this point, the main thing I'm thinking about here is what is going to happen once Wood gets up to that blue machine? Because again, Wood's doing that exact same line we were mentioning, diming in the corner in 1 and 2, using the banking as a ramp and just reeling these cars in with the momentum off the corner exits. That's going to be, again, interesting to see here. Watch on board and let's see again exactly what I'm referring to here.
And you can see the high line he's taking, able to run the car up in 5th gear as well. You'll see others come down maybe even to 3rd or 4th gear, so able to maintain a decent amount of momentum down that first corner. And here you look through 3 and 4. He's having to go down to the inside, in fact, Justin, because Jesper has seemingly seen the higher line that Andrew wanted to run. He's just trying to cover that off, trying to be a little bit more defensive at this stage of the run.
And we've mentioned a little bit about dirty air. It can push you up on the corner exits if you try and match line for line. And that's where, for a lot of drivers, they, especially in real life, Arjuna, try and play almost a guessing game. Try and guess which line is the car in front of me going to run, and if you pick wrong, you're likely going to be losing time on the corner exit because you can't carry as much speed. We've seen it right there with Wood. He's now guessed the bottom side. Orman that time guessed the top line, for example. So it's almost a guessing game, it seems, for where you can get the cleaner air to try and get a better exit.
It is the chess game that is open wheel oval racing, and on these short tracks as well, there is just so much that goes into it. So much testing that these guys are doing in their off time, and then once you get into these races, try and figure out where your car is going to be faster than the others. And you can see Andrew Wood back to the high line through 1 and 2, coming down the back straightaway right now. They've stretched out once again the gap between the 3 cars, 1 second. So we'll jump back to the battle for 4th, 5th, and 6th right now, because you can see Andreas Eich has managed to pull away a little bit, and it's Matt Holloway trying to run that outside line, trying to put the pressure here on Eric Winter in that shiny machine. Then you see in the background as well, Oliver Silver. He's very persistent here, and he's finally managed to get a nose in front of Brendan Lichtenberg as they dive into turns 1 and 2.
And what there, Lichtenberg gives him the spot there after so many laps of fighting. Lost him a bit of time, in fact, to Soranzo by a few car lengths. There were about 3-4 tenths off the race leaders in that scrap. But in that fight you were mentioning a little bit further up the road, Matt Hollenbaugh has been having a decent job of keeping within that draft still of Eric Winter and trying to just, again, be patient with using a similar line we see to Wood, but the difference is he just can't make the car cut as well as what we've seen from Wood so far in this race, where he's been able to ramp it on down. For Matt Hollenbaugh, it looks like he's pushing tight on the corner exits. It's nearly going more of a flatter run in 1 and 2. That time he arced it well in 3 and 4.
He got a good run off the corner, but not close enough into 1 and 2, and going to have to just try and find a line, but unfortunately he gets stuck in that exact same line as the one car in front of him, and unfortunately that just checks you up a little bit. Able to get a good run off the corner though. He's going to peek the inside in through 3 and 4, and I don't think he's got enough to try and really slide up the track too much here. Around the outside, Eric Winter going to try and hold the momentum, and he's got the speed. He's going to clear Matt across the start-finish stripe. This is a good battle for 5th place on track. They are 6 seconds behind your leader, Justin. We start to take a look at the battle for the lead as well. Jesper Orman has managed to clear, Andrew Wood has managed to clear Jesper Orman out front. And now Hugo Olsen with a 1.8 second lead. Well, he's about 10 seconds from catching any lap traffic in front.
Yeah, and this again, strong pace from Hugo. But this is, again, the real test. Wood's been really quick and clean air, it seems, once he's gotten by other cars. Curious on these lap times. Remember, the past couple laps he had been fighting or trying to get around Jesper. This next upcoming lap is going to be the true test, as he lost 2 0.5 to a tenth a lap on average. This time across the stripe, he was actually a little bit slower still, by about a couple 100ths, in fact, I think there, Arjuna.
Yeah, I think it's about half a tenth. We'll try and get the graphic up on your screen right now, and there you can see not even half a tenth in it, just under half a tenth, so back into clean air, and he's already pulled a 1.2 second gap over Jesper behind him. So with a little bit more clean air now, one car in front, he's up 16 positions, Justin, which is an incredible thing to think about. The track as tough to pass as this, but nevertheless, he's got the car under him and a long way still to go. We've still got 120 laps to go here, so at least 2 more pit stops, and we haven't had a green flag cycle yet. And I think that might prove a little bit tricky for some of these cars coming down onto the lane and also getting off the lane with the cold tires.
Absolutely, and we talked about it a little bit. This pit exit can be very treacherous, so to speak, a bit more of a flatter run. And there's been some cases where I've seen drivers absolutely loop it around in the middle of the grass just about, trying to exit the pit lane here. As well, though, there's that pit entry on the left side, where again, it's a harder cut towards the left, where you're trying to avoid the barrels and try and get down to the speed limit. A couple of drivers in the Wednesday race we were talking a bit about before tonight's action, for the first split of action for this week, a couple drivers were actually caught speeding in that particular race, trying to dive it down to 45 miles an hour, the speed limit tonight.
Yeah, and I definitely think if we do get that green flag cycle, expect the positions to just be shaken up a little bit. It's very, very easy to make a mistake, and like you say, Justin, it's not just something we see happen regularly in practice. I've done it myself as well, and I have a feeling that some of these guys haven't really done the most practice for green flag stops, because like you say, a lot of drivers talked on that Wednesday race. There's a lot of cautions there. We saw a lot of cautions early in this one as well, but down to only 15 cars left on the field, and seemingly it's spread out a little bit more, and Hugo Olsen is slowly catching a lot of these lapped cars now as we get this much more lengthy green flag run.
Just looks like Hugo just has planned this setup out very well. Eric Winter's pace is starting to come in. Wood's pace, he's actually quicker than Orman, who's fallen off to the 25.8s to 25.6s. But this is now where the fall-off starts to come into play, we talked about a bit, which is now averaging about 6/10 or so, give or take, on the tires so far. Expecting maybe about a second or so of fall-off, and there's a decent chance for a couple competitors to think about that strategy-wise. But again, most drivers expect them to try and stretch as long as they can on the fuel, Arjuna, because you never know if someone, say, loses control going into the pit lane and brings out the caution flag right now. And it's third.
It's the 12 car. It's Jesper Orman who has brought out the caution. So from third place on track, he spun by himself going through turns 1 and 2. And get the replay up on your screen right now. And we were just talking about green flag pit stops, and oh, that's an unfortunate incident. It almost looks like it was a little bit of a technical issue there. We'll try and grab another look at that one, but that is a very, very odd crash.
Yeah, that looks a little weird. Just a little bit weird there. As you see there, try to arc it on down. It just seems like car just starts randomly drifting off in the middle of the corner and almost goes straight off into the fence. So something must have happened there. A little bit of mix of both, it seemed there. Loss of grip, and then something with the steering where it just barely moved for the entire second half of the corner into the wall.
I have a feeling there may have been just a nasty gust of wind that came across the track at the worst possible timing, and what that means is we were talking about green flag pit stops. Well, all the cars are going to come down onto the pit lane for another round of pit stops under the yellow, and once again, Justin, the pressure's on these drivers to execute the pit stop properly, get out in front of all the cars that they stayed out in front of behind anyway.
Yes, indeed. So this is, again, a chance to try and play things out strategy-wise. Arjuna, just doing the math inside my head right now, it's still going to be tight if it stays green here, I believe, though, on the fuel mileage. It's still technically a two-stopper. This may become a fuel mileage race if it stays green from here.
We are close to it being a fuel mileage race for sure. There definitely needs to be a little bit of thought going to fuel saving for the drivers, and we saw the exit of pit lane, Justin. That was very, very close. Andrew Wood with it was a stop that was 0.3 of a second shorter. Sorry, 0.4 of a second shorter, and he almost managed to jump Hugo Olsen for the lead there, almost using that pit strategy to make something happen.
We've seen how important clean air is absolutely in this race so far, but Curious to see how this all plays out. I wonder if Wood maybe thought about that, just timed out the box as well as maybe adjusted how much fuel particularly goes in the car, because here's one of the things that is more so a stock car strat than I think our open wheel strat, Arjuna, is trying to underfuel the car for the balance. In the open wheel machines, the lower the fuel, the faster you usually go, especially on the fresher tires. That's something that may have been played into mind for Wood, just playing out the fact that the average runs have been about 30-35 laps so far tonight under green.
And with a few laps left under caution, we're going to step aside, take a short commercial break. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. iRacing Esports Network and its coverage of the IndyCar iRacing Series will return right after this. Hello and welcome back to the iRacing Esports Network and round number 12 of the IndyCar iRacing Series from the Worldwide Technology Raceway. About to get back under the green flag. Hugo Olsen's going to lead us to the green flag. And Justin, I just want to get your thoughts very quickly. You'll take over the call for the start of this restart as well. It's been a very interesting race, and this battle between Hugo Olsen and Andrew Wood is going to be the story of the rest of this race.
Absolutely, especially with the pace we see for Olsen on the longer run so far. Wood so far has been very quick. Elk has also been someone that's been very quietly running well. Green flag is out. We're back on our way. 112 laps to go. Still a two-stopper length on the fuel if we stay green. This is about to get very interesting because, again, wind has not calmed down at all. It stayed the same direction throughout this entire race so far, Arjuna. And now it's getting to the point where drivers are looking to scrap already side by side at the deep of the pack.
Yeah, that's Brendan Lichtenberg, who makes his way back past David Saranz up into 6th place on track. And like you say, a very aggressive pass there to get up. And you see in the background as well, Oliver Silva's going to be trying to make the pass happen. And we're seeing a lot of action here. And like you say, that wind is being a very treacherous thing that these drivers are having to deal with, Justin. And some of the people in our YouTube chat speculating that it might have been a weight jacker issue that brought out the caution with Jesper Orman.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case too. We talked about that need for balance, and if you end up having that issue with the weight jacker, that can end up in turn messing up that corner. We've seen it a couple times play into factor so far, trying to catch it. The difference was he tried to catch it by locking down the tires. Instead, it went to the outside wall instead of the inside fence. By the way, that battle for the lead started to get tight because Wood, with that little extra less fuel, is now quicker than Olsen.
And look at the gap that these guys have managed to build up as well. 1.5 seconds back to Andreas Eich in 3rd place. And these two drivers are really going to be scrapping it out here. And I think important here for Andrew Wood, Justin, to try and make something happen early. Because if he gets stuck a little bit, we saw what happened on that last green flag run. Got caught short about halfway through the run, 25 laps in, but he was still starting to struggle a little bit more and falling back from Hugo Olsen as compared to right now, and you can see the charge that he's really putting on.
Yeah, now trying to just line it up, and I think Hugo knows that he elected to put in less fuel because we've seen him actually try and snake the car a little bit more, Arjuna. More so than the other ones here. Here comes the run, though, on the inside.
Down to the inside, but not going to get the momentum off the corner. Hugo Olsen's going to hold on for now, but the battle is on, and Andrew Wood looks to that high line once again, trying to just arc the corner, build the momentum. And this time he forces Hugo Olsen to defend hard. Down to the inside. Is he going to peek up to the outside? He does take a look through 3 and 4, but still not committing. I think he's going to try and arc the corner off once again, but not able to make it work. And this is where the chess match is happening, Justin. This is where both of them are figuring out exactly how they want to play out the rest of this race.
You're dead even on the pace last time, and again, it's coming down to those preferences, absolutely. At this point, though, you have to keep in mind that if Wood can keep within range of Olsen this run, this may play perfectly for him for the last stages of this race. So if I'm Andrew Wood, you're pushing as hard as you can to make sure you stay tit for tat pace-wise. These two are about 0.2 of a second quicker than the majority of the field.
Yeah, they're already 2 seconds clear of third on back, and there is a fight happening for third, so it's not like there's not competitive action happening as Matt Hollabo now looks to the inside, going up into third place. In fact, he forces Andreas Like to go up even more than he would have wanted. Looked like there was a little bit of discomfort there for the number 1 machine, and Matt Hollabo, who made his first appearance in the IndyCar iRacing broadcast last week at Indianapolis, had an unfortunate crash taking him out early. Well, nevertheless, Justin, a very, very strong run up here into the third place, and now with clean air, let's see what he's able to do. But as I say that, the yellow flag is out, and I do believe it's for Julian Arbo.
Second one from him this evening here, and similar to what we've seen before, lost it off turn 2. Similar line this time, but that car to the outside and locked it on down instead this time to make sure he didn't hit the fence. Good job for him to actually lock it down that time to make sure he didn't get any damage here. Let's take a look.
So down into 4th gear, and once again, just that did look a lot like a gust of wind was forcing the car around there, Justin. If we take another look from the aerial view, I think we'll see there it was just the wind is fact, because it didn't look like he had too much steering into the car. The car wasn't too heavily loaded. Unfortunately, just maybe not the correct amount of angle for what the wind was giving him there.
Absolutely. The wind absolutely has just been a treacherous thing for drivers, and they were asking about it a lot during the final practice sessions before the green flag for this race, to try to adjust, asking, is there a crosswind, is there a headwind, to make sure they didn't snap around like that, and have that preparation for that as well as for the heat. Keep in mind, the track temp has actually gone up in Fahrenheit, up and down as the race has gone on, and it's stayed very hot. It hasn't cooled on down whatsoever, just about, Arjuna, outside of the air temp. But as expected, many drivers taking fuel here. They can make a one-stopper from here if it stays green, but others definitely taking that strategy call gamble, absolutely.
Yeah, and we're going to watch a replay here. Watch what Matt Hollabo from 3rd position decides to do. He's down on that pit entry lane, and watch this, Justin. He's going to pull to the right-hand side now, decides not to come down into the pit lane, and he's going to line up in 1st place now on this restart.
Yeah, and you can do that. The commitment cone's actually right inside the barriers for the wall, so you can duck out if you want to. It's a massive high-risk, high-reward gamble once again, because it's not as bad as before, Arjuna, but if this goes green to about 60 to go, they are going to lose that potential lap. That's the gamble, and remember, it's not like stock car racing where you have a lucky dog. You will lose a lap. You're likely pinned a lap, unless everybody then in turn comes down and you take a wave.
Yeah, and I think we talked about the risk versus reward earlier for Jesper Orman. Well, decided to stay out, put himself up into P2, waited for the next caution to come out. It worked seemingly well for him until he spun by himself. We'll take a quick look at the top 8 as they run. It is Matt Hollabo, Brendan Lichtenberg, David Soranzo, then Oliver Silva, Laura Gerhard are the 5 cars who have not come down the pit lane. Then you've got 6th place on back, Hugo Olsen, Andrew Wood, and Andreas Like, who did come down the pit lane, and it'll be interesting to see here, Justin. Hugo Olsen back in 6th place. We haven't seen tire wear being too much of a factor here. Are we going to necessarily see him start to struggle now that he's got the added factor of traffic to deal with?
Yeah, that's the bigger question, is how he manages that, because he hasn't really had to deal with any of the entire race, to be quite frank, so far, Olsen has. He's been able to just drive with no aero push and just try and run away. Now, this is going to be the real test to see how the car factors in. This might be a chance for Wood to capitalize. If Olsen doesn't find his way around the traffic, something to definitely keep in mind, as I believe in our cars actually ducked down in the number 14 to try and make sure they get that 50-50 mark we're referring to at the top of the broadcast you see right here.
That is Laura Gerhardt, and there's the possibility here, Justin. I'm just wondering, I don't know how far back Laura is, but she may have decided to stay out, and then when she saw the number of cars that stayed in, she is on Powerslide Motorsports, she may have decided to come down the pit lane and make her teammates' life just a little bit easier. It's not much, but Hugo Olsen now moves up into 5th place, and it'll be that much easier when he has one less car to pass, trying to get through the field once again.
Indeed, and trying to check around the mid-pack, I think, was where Laura's running. In fact, as far back as 13th in this race. So again, just, I think, a chance to try and gamble on the field strategy. I'm curious how Lichtenberg is going to handle here, too. We've talked about him and how quick he's been. Now, chance to prove what he can do. The interesting part's going to be that car third in line. We've mentioned Sorenzo so many times tonight with that different aero package he put on the front wing. Everyone else is potentially going to lose some time trying to get around him through the straightaways. It's going to be important to time it up well when this green flag drops in a couple laps.
Yeah, still at least one more lap under caution to wait here, and there are long caution laps here, and hopefully, Justin, we don't get too many of them this coming weekend. Of course, a doubleheader from the Worldwide Technology Raceway ahead of the IndyCar paddock, and I think it's 200 lap races, and under the sunlight is going to be a very different race to what we're seeing now. We are seeing fairly warm track temperatures in the simulator, but we may see even warmer temperatures when it comes to the real track when you see the sunlight as well.
And I'm glad you brought up the sunshine, because one of the first times that stock car racing came to this track in the 1990s, Arjuna, it was a day race. And it was basically a heat wave at the time. The tires were melting. There were overheating issues at that race. Guess which race ended up being ran under the lights for the majority of the time for that certain sanctioning body? It can get very hot, absolutely, and the tire wear is going to likely also factor in a lot for that respective race. Going to be interesting with 200 lap, 250 mile afternoon races that you've referred to this weekend for the doubleheader.
Yeah, and I'm very much looking forward to it. And, you know, much like it would have been in the month of May, it's a quick turnaround for the IndyCar paddock. Instead of heading to the Belle Isle, they're instead heading to the Worldwide Technology Raceway just east of St. Louis, Missouri. They're already up there and getting packed up, and it is on this restart. Matt Holliber going to take us back to green flag racing in a very, very different order. Matt Holliber leads from Brendan Lichtenberg down into turn 1, and David Soranzo in P number 3. He's got a lot of defending to do. We jump back to Hugo Olsen in P5, though. The first car on fresh tires, as you see Matt Holliber going low to the inside of the track, trying to hold on to the momentum. And already, Justin, we're starting to see these top 5, top 6 cars forming a little bit of a battle pack here.
Absolutely, and here comes the draft now. Lichtenberg's now lined things up. Everyone else is also lined up. Massive, massive check contact.
And that is huge championship implications. Hugo Olsen and Oliver Silver get together. Andrew Wood has also managed to get collected in this one. Let's take a look at the replay, but it was David Soranzo with a big, big checkup into turn number 1. Oliver Silver checked up in time, but unfortunately the yellow car behind there, you'll see, unfortunately 3 cars in a very, very big one there.
Well, that just changed the whole complexion of this race, didn't it? Just a lot of drivers just carried a ton of speed, and no one was willing to take a move to the inside in this line. In turn, just check up from Soranzo to make sure he didn't hit the back end of the blue machine, and bam, no time for anyone to see through one another, of course, since they're not invisible. And bam, around they went for the contact. 3 of your contenders now out of the race, likely from severe damage.
And I think we did also see another very, very close call with Eric Winterby right on board here, coming around turns number 3 and 4. He's behind Andreas Seik, and we'll see the incident unfold in front of us. And unfortunately there, Justin, I don't want to place the blame necessarily Oh, and there you can see how close it came to disaster for Eric Winter, but we'll grab one more look at the incident itself. I don't want to place the blame onto Oliver Silva, but he checked up very, very aggressively there when he had a little bit more space on the outside to make work.
Yeah, I think he was expecting almost, it seems, Lorenzo to stay on the top line, and that's why he checked so hard. The thing is, everyone else behind him just didn't expect that little check on the gas and a tap of the brakes. In turn, Wood's now out of the race officially. He's already off the track. Olsen severe damage. Lots of demolished cars who are running up in the top 5 all day.
Yeah, and that has definitely shaken things up, and you have to wonder, for both Andrew Wood and Hugo Olsen, they must be thinking about that decision to come down the pit lane. And you see the cars out front, Matt Holliber, Brendan Lichtenberg. Well, they'll be very happy, Justin. They chose not to come down the pit lane and avoided being in the middle of all of that situation and having to, make that avoiding action like we saw Eric Winter having to do.
Well, this race is now wide open, I'll say that much now from that incident. Not sure who will end up taking the checker flag. The interesting thing is, Silva still running, was able to put on a new front and rear wing in that. But in turn, you just have to think about reaction time is important, Arjuna, in that circumstance. There was little time to react and all of that. We've talked about a few times how you want to be more so setting up on the bottom in 3 and 4 than in 1 and 2, where the top line has really started to rubber on in, especially with Wood we've seen. I think all of that just seemed to all factor on in where it seemed like nobody wanted to try and get to the inside, obviously, for the bottom line. And in turn, everything all stacked up. And this is all going to affect the points with 2 of your top 3 contenders in the point standings having disastrous days.
Yeah, I wanted to bring this graphic up. Obviously, these points are not live updated. These were the points coming into this race, but we've seen both Adam Crane and Hugo Olsen being taken out by some very, very big incidents indeed. And third place, David Saranzo, well, he sits the third place on track right now, and that's got to be a very rewarding feeling for him, Justin. We talked about the situation with the drop weeks coming into this race, and Hugo Olsen has already used almost all 3 of his drop weeks. He's now going to have to use one of the 4 races available to him over the weekend to get a good result to try and maintain this championship fight for the next few rounds.
Curious to see how he does in those respective races, but man, it's going to be an interesting one. Keep in mind this also has effect to potential I rating for various other types of the iRacing side, but I think many of the focus is just trying to bounce back. You can't let that weigh you on down because there's that chance to get a better run, Arjuna, absolutely. And that's what always comes into play in these types of races. By the way, update from Hugo Olsen actually on that situation. He was actually stood on the brake, Arjuna, trying to avoid that checkup situation. In turn, no way to slow down in time. He's now been in the pits for now 3.5 minutes plus on damage repairs. 2 of the 3 cars involved out of the race.
Yeah, I would be very, very surprised to see Hugo Olsen be able to take that car back out of pit lane. We'll take a look at the schedule quickly, Justin, because like we mentioned off the top, the last oval round of the season, and we head next week to the Barber Motorsports Park to kick off a 3-race swing of the road courses, and 3 very different road courses indeed. And I'm excited to go to the Barber Motorsports Park because it's one of my favorite racetracks on the IndyCar schedule.
Yeah, and when the iRacing IndyCar Challenge ended up going to Barber Motorsports Park, it put on a good show with a lot of fiercely fought battles and a lot of passing. I think that race is going to be intriguing for these drivers as well, especially with the chance to balance out the push to pass. That's going to be very challenging. I also think WeatherTech Laguna Seca is going to be very challenging because of the amount of elevation changes, especially in the corkscrew that has caught many drivers off guard on the sim. Those 2 races are going to be absolutely exciting to try and watch on September the 4th and September 18th.
And don't forget, obviously, about the Brickyard as well. We head back one more time this season. It'll be the 4th trip in 15 races to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and we'll finish it off there with the road course. And it's not the brand new updated version, Justin. However, it was posted slightly earlier in the last few months that the iRacing team had a trip scheduled to go scan the updated Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Unfortunately, obviously, all the lockdowns over the last few months have put a pause on that. However, we'll be getting that as soon as feasibly possible, and I'm very, very excited about that.
I'm very excited as well, and it's understandable with everything that happened in 2020. Of course, you have to remember, too, that was also in preparation for NASCAR's debut for that road course, to try and get that specific configuration as well. Can't wait to see an updated Brickyard, especially with some of the importance there. But these drivers getting ready for an important restart with 91 to go.
And it is Matt Hollibaugh who still leads. Didn't come down the pit lane, so no changes in the running order out front. He's going to lead us back to the green flag in a very, very different running order to what we saw about 10 laps ago. Immediately, you have to focus on David Soranzo in third position. He's now the only driver in the top 3 in the championship with a chance of getting some solid points here. And even with slight damage to that car and a slightly different setup philosophy, he's got a lot of important work to do here. Out front, though, Brendan Lichtenberg looks to the high side, trying to build up some momentum here. But here comes David Soranzo onto his tail. That lower downforce isn't going to work nicely on the inside, though, Justin.
And it hasn't worked too well all day. We've seen several spins. In fact, pushes up the track a lot. Here comes Andreas now with a chance to try and fight for P3 behind him as Lichtenberg's ran away.
Yeah, and Andreas down to the inside now. He's the sole remaining representative from Team Talent. We saw Andrew Wood with a fantastic run, so we know the car has the potential here. David Soranzo slips back into 4th place, and something just to note now, Justin. Hugo Olsen in 13th place. Well, he's 8 laps down, still on the pit lane. Seemingly not retired from the race just yet, but we do have 12 cars left on track, a much shorter, smaller field than we started with. It might mean that the guys out front have to think about the green flag pit stops for the first time.
Indeed, because for a majority of the field, it's still a one-stopper on the fuel, except for the drivers who have stayed on a majority of these cautions. Hollenbaugh, Lichtenberg, as well as Soranzo all have to think about fuel. Getting very dicey, though, you see in the pack. That's Matt Houston, who we haven't talked about too much now in this group, with Winter and company still looking to gain spots back.
And David Soranzo in front is going to be another roadblock. Eric Winters had to fight with him this entire race so far, and once again stuck behind him. The single-plane car of David Soranzo in 4th place now has lost about half a second to the guys out front. 1, 2, and 3 still running in close order. Matt Hollibaugh trying to defend that inside line as Brendan Lichtenberg now has to fend off the challenge from Andreas Seik, and it's opened up very much so here, Justin. So much so that Oliver Silver, well, he was involved in the incident that brought out the last caution. He's already back up into 8th place now.
Yeah, replaced the back wing as well as the front wing, put him on a brand new engine cover under one of the most recent caution flags after that incident. So that car avoided significant damage. Lucky in that situation, to say the very least. And it's still got some decent speed. 25.4s. That's still a couple tenths off the pace of the race leaders up towards the front. But if you're in this grouping right here, you're pressing the panic button, because your net leader for your strategy cycle is running away now by a full second in P2 and Andreas.
Yeah, Andreas Eick in P2 is managing to now close in on Matt Hollibaugh as well. We did have an incident happen just a few moments ago. We'll grab a replay. It was Julian Arbo who managed to lose it on his own going through turns 1 and 2. Fortunately, Justin, no caution came out, but it's going to be a very, very similar, incident to what we've seen on many occasions so far today.
Looks like a little wing damage, just a maybe touch on the right side, but again, you have to be around cars for the caution flag. And again, the weight checkers in the wind have been so vital, and it's kicked up again in miles per hour by at least 3 or 4 on average throughout the race. These drivers have to be prepared for any sort of breeze gust, because it's not getting any easier with the amount of wind on this racetrack tonight.
Yeah, and I think Eric Winter right now, Justin, is struggling a whole bunch, and he must be super, super frustrated. The number 6 Devotion Sim Racing machine has been a roadblock the entire race for him, and he's having to fight very hard as Matt Houston looks to the inside, runs a little bit high there. That was a little bit close and uncomfortable, Justin. Almost very reminiscent of our first caution of the race between Adam Crane and Marco Brazil.
A little bit there indeed. And we've seen a couple drivers get really tight off the corner now with that weight check. In fact, the car behind them as well, and Dan in the 17, I think, actually just about tapped the wall with his side pod. In fact, that's how much these cars are pushing, even in clean air at this point.
Yeah, and these cars are starting to struggle a bit more. We look at the gap between third place Brendan Lichtenberg and David Soranzo. We want to look at the gap between second and third because Andreas Eick, like you say, the net race leader right now, Justin. 1.5 seconds clear of this battle in front, and he's now closing in. And the driver in front, that gap 1 second as well. And Team Talent's Andreas Eick in a very, very strong position. Long way still to go, and pit window going to open in about 10 laps time for your race leader. So much shorter pit stop going to be happening for the Matt Hollabaugh team potentially here, Justin, if he tries to just make the pit strategy work a little bit different rather than trying to fill the car evenly here.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because he can't make it on the one stop, right? So he's essentially forced to the two stop. You can't just hope that bashing the same thing over and over, hoping for the same thing to work over and over is going to work that way. You have to try and mix it up. That's what he's done. He's balanced out some of the time here and there. Up towards the front, has lost it here and there as well. But still pretty decent pace now that he's up in that clean air. But I'm still concerned about that strategy, absolutely, with how that fuel's going to come into play with that potential lost lap.
Yeah, and we just can talk a little bit about the differences, Justin, in the downforce package here versus in real life. We take a look at David Soranzo, who is running that single plane configuration well. This coming weekend, everybody on track will be running single plane, Justin. They don't have the choice of running a double plane option at this track. So here in the simulator, it's interesting to see that the majority of the cars on the track have opted to go for the double plane configuration. I think you said at the start of the broadcast, just 3 cars opting for the single plane.
Well, we talked about it, right? We're in this battle, for example, side by side, the bottom line hasn't been working. But we've also talked about, with the respective setup knowledge in these groupings, you want to put in as much testing time as you can, Arjuna, to be prepared for a race such as this. That includes finding out if single or double are faster for you in the wings. In turn, that amount of preparation ends up paying dividends. You're not going to choose the thing that makes you slower for the realism. You're going to choose the thing that's going to make you fast. Silva nearly went fast into the wall.
Yeah, very fortunate there not to bring out the caution flag once again, and we're starting to see more and more cars struggle by themselves now, Justin. We look out front, though, Matt Hollabaugh with a 1.5 second gap. He's just building it up right now. We take a look at that battle between 4th and 5th as well. Well, while we took a look at Oliver Silva having issues, Matt Houston's moved himself up past David Soranzo and Eric Winter. We'll grab a replay of that one on your screen right now.
Now let's take a look at this one, and it was a tight scrap. So we're discussing that tight squeeze. That time just kept it off, but Winter with that top line was able to carry more momentum, dive to the bottom side, and as we've seen with Wood, if you execute it well, you're likely completing the pass by the time you get to the apex of turn 3. And now, he's got decent positioning, Winter does now, but the problem is, so did Matt. He was able to get the pull right back by the time he got to the bottom of 1 and 2 again to scrap again and make the bottom work for one of the first times in a while.
Yeah, it was a slightly different pass there. We saw David getting a little bit hung up through 3 and 4, lost a lot of momentum, and then Eric Winter lost all of the draft and had to fend off the fight, and that didn't work. However, Matt Houston now up into 3rd place. We'll grab a replay of that one as well, but the race versus broadcasting car is having a fantastic fight back through the field right now and down through the inside of 3 and 4. Gonna get the pass down. Look at how high Brendan Lichtenberg is running as well. Really struggling compared to that red machine.
Almost looked like he decided, you know what, gonna let him go, just draft off and try to save a little bit of fuel, because many of the drivers, remember, under caution, Arjuna, had about 102 laps to go. That's still very tight for the mileage, so a couple drivers in this grouping may start having to think, okay, we have to save, knowing this car has to pit next, and we still have to try and hope we can get to 50 to go to make sure we're in the green light to go mark.
Take a look on the left-hand side of your screen. You'll see the gaps between the top 3 runners. Matt Hollabaugh leads by 2.2 seconds from Andreas Eick in the 1 machine. Then Matt Houston on this fantastic fight back has already closed that gap from 2 seconds to 1. He's really trying to close in here, and I think what we're seeing is potentially here, Justin, Andreas maybe doing a little bit of fuel saving, maybe trying to play his own pit strategy here.
I think that's exactly what he's doing here. He's actually still running faster lap times, but again, He knows that he's the net race leader in about 5-6 laps when the 13 has to come down in pit or so. So at this point, he's got that ability to just back it on down, put into a lower fuel mixture, as well as just ride along. 33 laps now on this stint already, including the caution flag laps. He's really backed it on down. This is allowing Matt right into the fight. But here's the thing. How much fuel is Matt going to be burning to try and get up to the 1 is the question, as traffic is now coming in.
He finally has to deal with a lapped car, and that's Julian Arborough, who finally becomes the first car to go a lap down on the track. So it's been a long way to get here so far, and down in 12th place, he's the first car a lap down. We watched Matt Holliber, though. We talked about the fuel window, Justin, 50 laps or so. Well, he's fast approaching that window now, and he has had to sit through a few cautions here or there. However, definitely within the window of expecting him down, and I'd say the next 5 to 10 laps.
Yeah, the caution flags allow you to save fuel. The best fuel discussion I heard was for every caution flag lap, you can essentially save an extra lap or two rather, in race fuel. So that is helping a little bit with the 13. I think he's, again, just trying to build up that time cushion to make sure that once he comes out of the pit lane and goes for that, what is going to be essentially a forced undercut call, that he's going to be able to be decent situation. It's still going to be tight, though. That's the main thing, though. On the fuel, by still at least a few laps out of that estimate. A few drivers in the real world race. Oh, it crashed on the backstretch. Matt has crashed to the inside.
Oh no, and no caution flag has come out just yet. So fortunately, we're still under green. However, the race leader has lost it on his own coming out of turn 2. Here comes the replay up on your screen. You can see there. Well, Justin, it's the story of the race coming out of turn 2. Another car getting caught out, and we'll grab an onboard look at it this time so we can see what was happening in the car.
And he said over the radio, just snapped, no warning. Just right there, got a little too higher up on the exit. Tried to go reverse lock, and bam, to the inside wall. With that car demolished, he's likely done now for the night as a result.
Yeah, down onto pit lane, trying to get some of that damage repaired. However, he's going to go at least 2 or 3 laps down. So what does that mean? Well, Matt Houston, his charge back through the field. He's now up into 2nd position, and he sees the car in front of him. That's Andreas Seich, and he sees the race lead. What's he going to do here? Lap 38 on the stint, so about 12 laps to go before his pit window is truly opened. Well, Justin, it's definitely looking like a one-stop here, and Andreas has been doing a little bit more fuel saving. Matt's going to have to get the move done and then find some pace on track to pull away so he gets a little bit more buffer going into the pit cycle.
Absolutely, at this point, just try to make sure he's within reach of Andreas once they have to duck down. By the way, Lichtenberg at that same moment around that spin has just come out of the pit lane for his scheduled stop, 8.5 seconds. He's definitely have to go for a 2-stop as a result of the number 8 machine. So these drivers, they're going to be still tight by about 5 laps or so, give or take, based on the estimates on that number we've seen from Lichtenberg now.
And Lichtenberg is a lap down as well, so he's going to need a caution flag to come out and just maybe help him out a little bit. Maybe he's also going to need, Justin, the caution to fly at the perfect possible time, because we've seen it happen in other races here in the IndyCar iRacing Series. Doesn't matter if you go a lap or 2 down. I think back to Tim Doyle at Richmond. Well, he came back from 2 laps down at that one to win the race. So you can be a lap down at some of these short tracks and still have the potential to win.
But Tim Doyle with an absolutely stellar driver, have to give him credit as well, absolutely. But everything has to play out right to be able to have the pit cycles timeout to where you can get the lap, be able to take the wave as a result, and hope that the cars in front all tuck down into the pit lane. If it doesn't work out for you, that's where you start hitting that panic button as a driver. There's still 60 laps to go, coming up to 59 laps to go for these drivers, though. And still, Matt, he's on a tear in this race. Have to give him credit once again, as we talked about. 18th in the point standings entering tonight with drops.
And something else just to mention, obviously, Justin, is, I don't know if you know this, but Matt Houston, part of the Race First team, well, they organize the r/IndyCar iRacing League and help broadcast it as well. So Matt Houston, a big part of the r/IndyCar community, and glad to see him here in the IndyCar iRacing Series as well, doing well. It's taken him a long way to get up to this point. We take a look at the positions gained on the left-hand side of your screen. You can see he's up 15 positions as well, and similar to Andrew Wood, Justin, he's had to come back through the field. He's not done it in the clinical way that Andrew did it early, but he's managed to make it work later in this race and put himself in with a chance of taking home the race win.
And remember, he is a big part on top of that. In other portions of the IndyCar community, competes with Lionheart for its Retro Series, also competes in the iRacing IndyCar Challenge, where he made a couple starts, in the Underdog IndyCar Challenge, where he won several different races this year, as well as has won several different times at various tracks. He's known more for his victories at tracks like Infineon, Road America, etc., where he's in or near double digits, but he still has a few oval wins to his belt, as we've seen in his career. Milwaukee Mile in a retro car. The bumpy Daytona he's actually won twice. He's never actually won here at Worldwide Technology Raceway, though, based on his record for this respective driver in an official race.
Well, he's got the chance in front of him, and 46 laps into this stint, we're expecting them to come down the pit lane very shortly. Take a look back at David Saranza, though. He is down onto the pit lane. It's been 59 laps since he last came down. Very gingerly getting down onto the speed, and you can see, Justin, we were talking about it here. It's very easy to be a little bit too aggressive at a track like this, where the pit exit line is so deep into the exit lane. You get a pit lane speeding penalty, but it looked like David Saranzo getting in fairly clean fashion there.
Dead even, in fact, at 45 miles an hour the whole way up, so no penalty there. But the drivers everyone else we're keeping an eye on still, who hit under the past couple yellows, they can still stretch it for a decent amount of time to the point where they'll be good on the one stop. So for Saranzo, it's going to be extremely tight. Look at the track map. Already separated out, though. From second to third is about 9 seconds between Matt Houston and John Downing on the track.
And let's see what happens here. The last few laps, we bring up the graphic on your screen right now. Andreas Ike has seemingly pulled up the pace a little bit here, Justin, because last time around he was just a tenth slower. Well, there you can see the last 3 laps, it's slowly been growing as well. So maybe that fuel saving that Andreas is doing, he's just kicked it up a little bit of a gear here, pulling in some very impressive lap times late in the stint now.
What can I think at this point? Just trying to make sure, okay, time to turn up the wick rather, and try and lick the stamp and pull that stamp on forward in terms of the time. That's what he's trying to do, so to speak, is try and gain that buffer time back, pulling away, knowing he's got to duck down in a couple laps. So he's got a bit of fuel to burn. May as well try and make sure you go for an extra couple laps up to a lap 50 and then duck on down, because you don't want Matt behind you by half a second of the pit stop. You want him as far away as possible, but you have to duck down.
Yeah, and it's been a very up and down race for Andreas as well. Qualified in second place. He dropped back at one point all the way 7th. Back out to the race lead now, and that's what IndyCar racing is. It's up and downs, it's the highs and lows, and we go to so many different types of circuits as well, Justin. I mean, you're part of the eNASCAR Coke team, and you know the different skills it takes at the different type of tracks. Not just here in the IndyCar, where we have the different style of the road tracks and the ovals, but even on the oval, you have a short track like this. Well, it doesn't drive anything like how Iowa or Richmond would do, and that's why we're seeing some cars like Brendan Lichtenberg struggling a little bit more compared to the performance we've seen from them elsewhere.
Absolutely, and again, you put in a ton of time to try and work this all out. And you also have to keep in mind, again, the different driving styles and how you take the lines here. Usually based on official racing, there has been a lot of attrition as here comes the pit stops. And some of the drivers are thinking this is going to be still tight for these respective cars on this strategy window. Because remember, there were a couple who did top off. John Downing is the first of that top off group.
Yeah, and we're going to grab a replay of this because Matt Houston with a major save to get it down onto the pit lane. Just give me a second. I'm trying to get it down on the replay now, and here we go. You can see slowing down to the pit lane speed, and here comes that little bit of power kick. Manages to save that car, and Justin, that may have just saved his chance of winning this race here today.
And like I mentioned, it can get very slick down there and fairly loose. We've seen a little bit of that looseness right there. Good save, though, and doesn't lose too much time, but overall about 10.8 seconds, give or take, inside the box. 11.1 once corrected for the overall time, just about a longer pit stop compared to Andreas, who only took a 9.5 second stop.
And Andreas is coming out in clean air, which is perfect as compared to Matt, who's lost a little bit more time. And in fact, he's also fallen behind David Soranzo. So Matt Houston was up in second place, charging forward. Got a little bit more work to do there. You can see the gap between David Soranzo and Matt Houston, 2.3 seconds as the race first car brings its tires up to temper and pressure and tries to just build up the speed. But a lot of damage done in his fight here, Justin, because he's lost quite a bit of time to 3 cars in front of him.
Keep in mind, though, that Soranzo is on that different window where he has to definitely pit an extra time. Silva, though, is just ducked in this time by for his scheduled stop. He's made it about 49 laps or so, including the caution laps. Just looking at the numbers all of a sudden here, this is going to be extremely tight, even for the drivers who just pit a couple laps ago.
It is extremely tight, and some drivers like John Downing, who still haven't come down the pit lane, might be in a much stronger position, Justin. However, the reason why I bring up some of these gaps is that now we know for a fact that some of these cars need one pit stop versus the others. Well, what happens if we get the caution flag comes out? We're probably going to see all the cars diving down onto the pit lane, getting a fresh set of rubber underneath them, and that might lead to a fairly exciting shootout the last stages of the race.
We're actually seeing John Downey and Laura Gerhardt elect to come down this time, and remember, they just topped off on the previous caution after the quickie. So this is a difference of only a couple laps. They were able to go further, so they can make it decently, I think, with a decent cushion, Arjuna, and actually afford to put just a tiny less fuel in the car if they want here.
Yeah, we know for a fact then John Downing, Laura Gerhardt, who are both down on the lane, will be good on fuel. I think, Justin, if I'm doing the math correctly, Andreas Eick, he's done 5 laps as he crosses the stripe. He will also be good on fuel. Got 42 laps still to go. I think, Justin, with that 50-lap fuel window, if we go green to the end here, we have to look out for both Andreas Eick and Matt Houston and see exactly where they're going to shape up in regards to their pace here.
And the crazy thing is, you mentioned some of the time lost in the positioning for Houston. He lost about 10 seconds now to Andreas. That is absolutely astounding how much time was lost in that pit stop sequence. But on the bright side, you are now in the lead lap cycle now with some of the pit stops. Lichtenberg is currently your race leader now as a result. But again, him and Serrano for sure have to come down one more time in this race if it stays green. They need a caution.
They need a caution, and they need it soon as well, I would think, because Brendan Lichtenberg, 30 laps to go. But we expect him down on the pit lane. Justin, these laps tick away very, very quickly. We've had a few early cautions that made the pace of the race slow down a little bit, but now only got 11 cars rather cycling the track. Matt Hollowbo has retired from this one as well. It's just flying by. These are very, very quick laps here at the Gateway racetrack, and 30 laps to go, 25 laps to go before we expect Brendan to come down the pit lane. He needs something to happen and a multi-car incident to bring out the caution.
Yeah, Hollenbaugh was saying after that incident he needed a caution for sure and knew it. I think he absolutely knows he needs some mistakes here, but looking like Houston's just electing to say, you know what, gonna ride behind some of these other cars, take the chance to save a bit of fuel in case Andreas is pushing too hard up there. Since, keep in mind, Houston's running a couple seconds off the pace surprisingly last time by. Ike is still running decent times in the 25.3s. He's the quickest car.
I'm trying to take a look here, Justin. I do believe Matt Houston has hit the wall significantly down on speed. That last time around, he was 1 second slower. I'll try and bring it up on the replay now, but I do believe something has happened to him. So here we go.
Something's off. I think part of it, again, we mentioned the longer pit stop. You wonder if something may have been slightly damaged to the car to lose him some of the time. Not quite sure, but not quite sure here because car all of a sudden just seemed to just start dropping off lots and lots of pace after her looking so good for so long.
Yeah, and we're watching now. This is about 4 laps to go on the replay, and you can see it's already looking very slow. And Oliver Silver behind, who's been caught up in his own incidents here today, just seems a little bit confused here. I'm not exactly sure what's happening, but we're going to see Oliver go to the inside, and Matt Houston in a very, very sick Dallara IR18. Last lap time around, though, was much better. Justin, I wonder if he had some technical issues there.
Yeah, something had to have gone on there. That is extremely strange, absolutely. No tap on the wall, just seemingly decided, you know what, we're going to back it on down by a couple seconds. And that might come down again to how this fuel's coming in with Andreas pushing as hard as he is. The thing is, Matt gave up about 15 seconds to Andreas. So there's that massive buffer in case something happens there. So again, that's that buffer if he can make this fuel go to the distance.
I am almost 100% confident at this point, Justin, that Andreas Seich has sufficient fuel to make it to the end of the race. So very interesting to maybe hear from Matt Houston after this one, figure out what happened to him. But out front, it is Andreas Seich who closes in on Brendan Lichtenberg, going to get back to the front of the field, and Brendan's going to be very reluctant to give up the spot, I think, here, Justin. He doesn't want to get dirty air and lose more time, knowing that he's got to come down the pit lane at some point and take about a 1.5 lap penalty in terms of the pit stop cycle under green.
And at the same time, some of the drivers here have to also think about trying to make sure you save the tires a little bit to make sure you don't overcook them, because you push too hard, Arjuna. Still, even on the V6 tire model in the iRacing service, they'd still fall off like a cliff once you got to around 60%-ish, give or take, depending on the car chassis. So that's something these drivers have to make sure they don't reach that cliffing point. It's much more aggressive on the V7 now, but it was still very aggressive once you got to a certain point in the Indy cars with the tires.
And like we've been saying, warm weather here, a little bit warmer than some of the drivers were expecting, which confused some of the drivers in that Monday strength of field race, the first race over of the week when the switchover happens. Well, I know a lot of drivers were preparing for cooler conditions in the solo practice sessions, and then as soon as the official sessions went up, it was a little bit warmer, caught some of the drivers out, and that just impacts that tire life that much more. And right now, Andreas Seich, 0.3 of a second behind Brendan Lichtenberg. It looks like, Justin, he's just conserving both the tire and fuel. He's got a good 5-second buffer over David Soranzo behind, who we know has to come down the pit lane. You then have to look back a further 8 seconds to John Downing.
There he goes.
As Brendan Lichtenberg does indeed peel down onto the pit lane.
Lichtenberg electing to come down absolutely here. Looking like he's just saying, you know what, let's split it up here, put in as least amount of fuel as we can to make it 30 laps. Go from there and put in some hot laps. The danger part is he's likely going to potentially lose a lap here in this sequence. We'll have to see how Lichtenberg all fares out here, because he's going to have a lot of time to try and gain up. That strategy didn't work out for him, so keeping an eye still on drivers like Downing and Winter to see if they can stretch the fuel. Remember, they are some of the drivers who are in the green light by a decent margin.
Yeah, John Downing, in fact, is definitely good on fuel. We saw him come down with 43 laps to go. Sorry, excuse me there. And you have to think about the fact now, Justin, we're watching Eric Winter, who's currently running in 4th. He's about half a second behind the Sadie Sim Autosport machine in front. Well, David Soranzo in 2nd. We know he's going to come down the pit lane. This is the battle for 2nd and 3rd net race. So if you're Eric Winter, it's been a tough race for you. You've had some issues trying to pass some of the cars around you. I think it will be a very, very good run to be up in 3rd position at this late stage of the race.
Yeah, he's been in a decent spot all racing and having a decent pace, but again, has just not been able to capitalize on drivers' mistakes, try and cut to the bottom side, to try and dive the corner off turn 2. None of that's worked towards his direction. The main thing here is, too, he's also having, 1, chance to save fuel a bit off Downey if he wants, but 2, the dirty air in the corner is starting to factor in. That's really starting to really struggle with him. It seems like he almost gets a bit more tighter than some of the other cars have been in that draft. That's losing him a bit of time now, still in the car in front by about an hour, a couple tenths.
And right now, Andreas Seich out front, the fastest car on track last time around, a 24.85. The closest driver to that was Brendan Lichtenberg, who's just come down the pit lane, went a little bit faster. In fact, the last time around, he just crossed the start-finish line. But we talk about controlling a race, Justin. Well, it didn't go his way early on, early doors, as they would say, but once he got out front, he's controlled this race almost perfectly, played the pit strategy exactly how he needed to, and right now leads by net 13 seconds over John Downing in what will end up being 2nd place.
And at this point, if it stays green, At this point, even if Andreas runs out of fuel on the last lap, he's got enough of a gap if he has it even 3 and 4 almost, it seems, Arjuna, to try and let it coast. He doesn't have quite as many cars, though, to be able to save fuel off, except for a couple lap cars you see up the road. That's going to be important for him to make sure that he doesn't have to rely on this massive, massive bubble. It's still now about 24 seconds between him and Matt, who continues to just completely back it on down.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what's happening here, but Matt Houston with another 27-second lap, and what a change of fortunes for that machine, because it went from fighting for that race lead, Justin, to now seemingly struggling very, very hard. He's pulling down onto the inside. He's very, very slow here.
That's the leader.
Not exactly sure what's happened to Matt Houston, but as he lets the leader by, continues to slow down, and now down in 6th place, 1 lap down.
Yeah, this is the strangest tactic I think I've seen in a while for Fuel Strat, because you don't normally see someone back it down by 3 seconds. Even in IndyCar, you look to try and maybe go 90-80% throttle down the straights in some cases. He's really been trying to slow it down in these corners. I think he's absolutely nervous on that number, even with the longer pit stop, based on what we're seeing. And he's hoping, I think, at this point, Andreas runs out before the white flag, the way it's going.
It's a very bizarre strategy. I'm still not exactly sure what happened. Although someone in our YouTube chat giving us a possible idea here, Justin, is very possible here. He maybe underfueled his car, or maybe even didn't take tires. And that might just be put his car rather in the situation where it's very, very loose, very tough to control. And the only way for him to get that number 10 car to the end of this race, to back it down and just control the race from now on.
He definitely took tires, just double checked on that one, but he also overran his box to lose some of that time. I'm absolutely curious to see what the philosophy is here on that, with how it's been backing on down. I'm still, though, if anything was to happen again, this is John Downing and Eric Winters music, because they're still 12 seconds back. They've also been backing it down a significant amount, but they've also got a chance to try and really move up if anything was to go wrong.
Yeah, and David Saranzo, well, he's looking at 15 laps maximum, I would say, of fuel to go. And take a look at the top left-hand corner of your screen with 19 laps to go. He needs a caution, and he needs it soon. Doesn't look like it's going to come out, though. And take a look on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen right now. You'll see the track map, and you'll see all the cars still circulating. We started with 19. Well, unfortunately, as a result of incidents, we're down to just 11 cars lapping this 1.25-mile circuit now, and only 5 of those cars on the lead lap. And Andreas Light continues to circle. He's going to get at least 1 more of those cars lapped before the end of this race. And this is what happens sometimes on these longer green flag runs, Justin, because you have the importance of the setup here, and it took a while for us to get these long runs, but we're starting to see some of these cars just extending their legs as we go long on these green flag runs.
And that's where you want to build the setup for. A lot of teams may think, or at least ones who are starting off, or setup builders, they feel it out for maybe a 10, 15 lap run, saying, you know, it's fast, let's go with this. But if you don't have the speed on a long run, if you get one, that's where that lack of preparation is in turn exposed. So it's all important at that point for these drivers to have that preparation if you want to contend for a victory in this type of moment. The top 3, as you see on the left side of your screen, separate 13.4 seconds. Getting intriguing. And the interesting thing here, I want to almost go back towards the 10 again of Matt Houston and listen on board, because he's not even shifting gears too much anymore. And one thing that I've noticed, Arjuna, when racing for fun on the oval side, when they've gone to a super speedway, you accidentally over-rev a gear, you lose that gear. It's almost like he's lost gears or something based on what's going on here. Take a listen. He's not even shifting.
And the power band of these cars, Justin, sits between about 11,500 RPM and 12,000 RPM. That's where the peak power of the engine really gets delivered. If we take a look on board, I think you're right. He's not even shifting. There's 2 possible options here, I would say. One, potentially his wheel has started having some issues. He's no longer able to shift the car down into 4th or 5th potentially. However, the second one, like you say, he may have over-revved that engine at some point, may have ran a little bit too close to some of the cars in front, overheated the engine a little bit too much, and now he's having to coast to the end. He's still running very, very slow lap times. I think, like you say, down in 8th place now, he's going to actually lose a position to Laura Gerhard in a few laps, and Oliver Silva is not too far behind as well. Not what Matt Houston would have been hoping for when he saw Andreas Eick in front of him and looked to get to the race lead.
I've also already seen in some cases on the stock car side where more so you try and use the lower revs to save a bit of fuel. I think that's part of the philosophy too in that regard. We haven't seen it too much from Andreas though, where he has been pushing much the run. He's now started to back it on down though too to 26-second lap times. Much of the field is now dropped off to that mark. The only driver who isn't in that mark is Lichtenberg last time by. Most of the field has gone to the 29.5s to 29.6s on the fuel mark.
Yeah, and Soranzo has also been backing it down. Last time around a 27.398. I wonder if he's trying to make it without having to come down the lane. See Eric Winter now diving, going to move himself up into 3rd place now, and Eric Winter has also dropped off a little bit. You can see the gap between 2nd and 3rd up to about 3 seconds now. Like you say, Justin, a lot of drivers I think might have underfueled the car a little bit. This is where you can't afford to make mistakes in something that's so easy, you know what I mean? Because the pit strategy is very easy to make a mistake there, and you're never going to be able to gain back a lot of that time on track.
And there's a lot of heated discussion, I think, as well from some of the viewers too of, will Andreas in turn have to come down and pit, or will he use this buffer to try and make it to the finish? Because again, if you feel like you can make it to the white flag, at least try and risk staying on the racetrack. He's doing the exact same tactic that Hudson's been doing for the past few laps. So I'm curious now if he's going to actually be able to make it as well. If he doesn't, this race is wide open. Let's put it that way, with the way this is going to finish.
And it's interesting to see some of the lap time variations as they occur now, Justin, because Matt Houston, well, last time around, only 0.2 off the pace of Andreas Eick, so it's hard to know exactly what's happening. However, the one thing we know for sure is a 13-second lead for Andreas Eick. He's in a very, very comfortable spot now, and like you say, I think if he ran out of fuel on that last lap of the race, he might have enough momentum to take that checkered flag in out front. So let's see what happens. Like someone in our chat is saying right now, Andreas is not saving at all. Last time around a 25.965. So at this point, I don't think we're going to see Andreas pitting.
No way. No way. You're stuck on this call. And we're reaching the point of no return in the next couple laps or so to make it to the end here. As here comes Serrano for his, looking like he's now slow on the bottom of the racetrack. Surprised he didn't duck down there on 48 laps now on the stint, and he's off the pace.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he's trying here, because you lose about 1.5 laps when you make a pit stop, but if you're going to...
He's out of gas?
Well, he's out of
gas.
He's out of gas, and Justin, he willingly chose not to come down into pit lane. Let's hope this doesn't bring out a caution flag now. If he does stop on track, he's going to have to do it in a good position. He did pick up a little bit of speed there, though. So there is some big games being played in regards to the fuel mileage now.
He completely shut off the engine for the whole front straightaway. I'm not sure what Serrano's now thinking here. This is getting tight for the cars behind who feel comfortable on the fuel. Not sure what exactly happened there. He's done it again. He's, again, shut off the engine. Just about trying to clutch and coast almost that you would see in a stock car.
Yeah, this is some of the most bizarre pit strategy I can ever recall seeing. You see John Downing in second place now blowing by David Sorrenzo, who's very slow on the back straightaway. And this is a very interesting strategy. If he loses 7 seconds every lap, well, the next 3 laps, he's going to lose almost a full lap just by that. So David Sorrenzo with some interesting strategy here. And right now, we'll pull up on the left-hand side of your screen the positions as they stand. There you can see how the entire field runs. 4 cars on the lead lap, and there's still a lot of mix-up that might be happening here, JP.
And at this point again, if you choose a strategy, whether saving or stopping, you have to commit to it. It's almost looking like, again, Serrano's committed to this call, and down to the lane, it looks like, again, is Silva now with some damage in the closing laps coming to the white.
And there was an incident that forced him down the pit lane, and we were very lucky to not get a safety car as a result of that one. So fortunately, we stay green. Andreas Eich is going to take the white flag here. And as we pull ahead, you see David Soranzo there just pulling to the left-hand side, trying to save fuel. He's down 2 laps, so he decided not to come down the pit lane. It's cost him 7 positions in what would have been a very good championship haul. However, for Team Talent, it's Andreas Eich who's going to take home the checkered flag after 186 laps. And what a fantastic performance from the Team Talent driver. He didn't have it easy, Justin, but he managed to fight through, and he played that strategy exactly what he needed to do.
And was able to save the fuel just enough to get to the finish without running out of fuel even on the white flag lap. What a run for Andreas to play the strategy game and take advantage of the attrition to take this checker flag. What a call. What a race for Andreas to take the checker flag today. And I think some of the drivers absolutely going to be impressed with some of this strategy movement tonight.
And we've seen Andreas take a number of pole positions of the last 9 races that we broadcast here live on the iRacing Esports Network. However, this is the first time get to see him take the checkered flag as all the cars now across the line. Go ahead and pull up the race results. There is Andreas Eich wins by 12.7 seconds from John Downing, Mercedes Sim Motorsport, with Eric Winter coming in third with 19 seconds. Kazuhiro Shiba with a very late charge to almost get onto that podium, but then 5th on back, finishing 1 lap down. Brendan Lichtenberg, Dan Liench, Matt Houston, Laura Gerhard, David Soranzo, Julian Arbo, and the rest of the cars: Oliver Silva, Matt Hollabo, Hugo Olsen, Andrew Z. Wood, Jesper Orman, Tobias Cantert, Aaron Roos, Adam Crane, and Marco Aurelio Brazil. A lot of mix-ups there in what was a very, very dramatic round number 12 here from the Worldwide Technology Raceway. I'm going to step aside for just a few moments for a few short messages, and we'll be back with the post-race show here live on the iRacing Esports Network. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Coming up to the line, being chased, and it was Braden Johnson. Unbelievable finish. It was 1/1000th of a second between them.
Green flag in the air. We are racing in the 2020 24 Hours of Daytona.
They go door to door for the feature race lead here on the last lap of the race. Side for the race lead in the final corner at Homestead.
Down the back straightaway, 3 wide again for the race lead. This is unbelievable stuff here tonight.
Loma is going to have to be very deep on the brakes, and he is very deep on the brakes. It's side by side through the corner. This is for the win.
It'll be side by side. Davies low, Ottinger high. To the very inside is Garrett Lowe. 4 wide at the stripe. For all he's worth here on this outside line, neck and neck. Who's going to back out? Does anyone back out? Verstappen starts to squeeze on the inside, and now he'll try and straight line it. Goes under the apron, drag race to the line. It's so close to call.
.186 very dramatic laps later, it's Andreas Eich for Team Talent taking home his first win here of the season. Round number 12 from the Worldwide Technology Raceway. Thank you for joining us on the iRacing Esports Network for RaceBot TV's coverage of the IndyCar iRacing Series. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, and I'm joined by Justin Prince once again. Just to recap, Justin, what was a very dramatic race with some very, very big championship implications, with all 3 of your championship contenders having a very difficult afternoon.
Yes, indeed. Several drivers collected in that stack-up effect, but several more ended up getting challenged on the fuel mileage game and ended up losing said game. Andreas played the game well and in turn took the checker flag tonight. What a finish overall. Andreas, for his reward, ends up gathering 182 championship points to add to his total with that 12-second victory. Several of the drivers who went even more aggressive on the fuel save didn't even make it onto the lead lap of the checker flag.
Yeah, it was a very interesting race from the pit strategy perspective, and we take a look at the race results. You see only 4 cars actually finishing on the lead lap, and we'll take a look quickly at the standings as they came into this race, Justin, because like we said, Hugo Olsen and Adam Crane, they finished the tail end of the order, and David Saranzo was up in second place at one point. However, a little bit of a weird fuel strategy there dropped him to, I believe it was 9th on track, and not going to be the type of points haul he would have wanted here.
Yeah, I'll be quite honest, I've never seen a clutch and coast in an IndyCar prior to tonight, but it's something drivers are at least aware of on the tactic as well as staying in 6th gear to save the amount of revs. In the end, Serrano, he tried to make the one-stop work on what was essentially a 2-stop window, but a majority of the cars who ended up actually having to take that extra pit stop, especially Lichtenberg we talked about, finished in 5th. So it seemed like, again, if you have the mixture of speed as well as played the smart calls on saving the fuel, you're likely finishing up towards the front, and some of these drivers in your top 10, they paid the price for some of the mileage tonight.
And we take a look at the schedule. Final oval race of this 15-race calendar. We're going to finish it off with 3 consecutive road races, starting at Barber Motorsports Park, going then to the West Coast, WeatherTech Laguna Seca, and then finishing it off at the Brickyard. The most fitting place, Justin, wouldn't you say, to finish any IndyCar series. The home of, IndyCar racing in many ways.
Yeah.
The Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
I think that's going to be exciting for some of the competitors, absolutely, to try and close things on out and a chance to kiss the bricks on the road course version of the track. Still going to be a challenging road course as well as the other ones on the calendar. 3 differently distinct tracks, 3 different tracks that will challenge you at different parts of your setup and driving ability. It's going to be fun to see how things fare out, though, at Barber Motorsports Park.
Yes, and a swing of 3 consecutive race weekends is going to continue next Friday from Barber Motorsports Park. Do join us here live on the iRacing Esports Network, same time and place for round number 13. We hope you do enjoy the upcoming doubleheader from the Worldwide Technology Raceway. 2 races Saturday and Sunday from the IndyCar paddock. But for myself, Arjuna Kankipati, Justin Prince joined me in the virtual commentary booth, and as always, TV cameras provided to us by Istvan Balov of TrackCams22.com. Thank you for joining us here on a Friday evening. We'll see you in a week's time from Barber.